In the Suncel page builder, you can create editable blocks in ReactJS, and depending on your needs, you can also add settings to those blocks to customize them as much as you want. By default, you have access to a list of settings already implemented, such as a text field, a select field, or a link field, for example. But it would be great if you can add your own custom settings in ReactJS. Hi, this is Nico from Suncel, a headless CMS with the page builder based on ReactJS, and in today's video we're gonna see how to create your own custom settings in ReactJS to handle the margin and the padding of your blocks. Let's do it. I already created a project called custom settings on my Suncel dashboard, so next thing I want to do is to open a terminal and to use the npx create Suncel app. You will be asked if you have a Suncel account. Yes, and the name of your project. In this case, we will call it custom settings. You will need to choose your starter with or without Tailwind CSS. I will choose with Tailwind CSS, and after a couple of minutes, it will be created. So once it's installed, we can go inside the project, so cd custom settings, and we can start VS Code. So we open the project in VS Code, and we will add the environment variables to the project. So let's rename the .env.example to .env, and we go back to our project. We will copy the API key, we put it in the Suncel public Suncel key, and we copy also the revalidation secret, and we paste it there. Okay, perfect. So when it's done, we will open a terminal inside the VS Code and run our project. Maybe we can zoom a bit more. And now if we go inside our localhost/admin, we put our credential and we arrive to the dashboard of your project. So first thing we will do is to create a page so we can test everything. So we will call this a home page. It will be on the root, and that's all. So let's go inside the home page. So by default in the template you have an example block with just a title and subtitle and a little setting. So the goal of this video will be to create a custom settings to handle the margin and the padding of your blocks. So to do this, we will go inside the code, and for example inside the Suncel folder we will create a new folder that we will call custom settings. We will create a new folder inside. We will call this setting spacing. And we will put it inside a custom settings folder, because we may have multiple files to create these settings. So let's do it this way. And we will export spacing field. Okay, so we create a basic React component. We may not need this. Okay, perfect. And now to be able to display these settings here, we need to add it inside the admin page. So inside this Suncel admin components, we can add the property settings components, and these settings components will be an array of all the custom settings that you want to add to your project. So for each settings you will need to define the type. So in this case we will call it spacing, and after you will need to define the component that will be displayed when this type spacing will be used. So to do this we will do spacing, and we will return the spacing field component that we have created. Okay, so now if we go, for example, on the example blocks that we have by default in the template. So if I go in a Suncel blocks, hero, title, and sub. So we are talking about this component, title and sub, that we can see here. And if we go inside the settings of this block, here we will be able to add our custom settings that we created. So when you add the custom settings, the type will be custom. And after, you will need to put the custom type, and it's a name that you have defined in the admin. So in this case, spacing. And like for any other settings, you can define a name, for example, spacing, and you can get the comma, and you can also add the slug. So for now, this spacing component just display a new component. Let's set spacing settings. So for now, it's just display spacing settings. So the slug is useless right now, but later on, these custom settings will edit the property spacing of your components that we will define later. So let's come back inside our page builder. And now if we refresh, let's add again, we have our spacing component. So basically you just create a React component and it will be displayed here. So now let's see how to edit a property from a custom settings component. So let's come back to the code. So here in our spacing field, you can actually use another type from Suncel called settings component props. These settings components will give you access to two types, a value and an onChange. So the value will be the value of the properties that we want to edit. For example, in this case, it would be the property spacing that we will add just after on this component. And onChange will be the function to edit this value. So actually, to be able to use this value and this onChange property, we need to give it to our component here that we have defined inside the admin page. So inside the component property, you actually have access to the props, and these props contain the value and the onChange. So we just give it to our spacing field component. We save and save. And here, if we want to display the spacing value, we will need to define it in the properties of our component. So let's just say it's a string for now to do a really quick example. Let's display it here. Let's give it a default value, spacing default value. Okay. So now we have the spacing default value here from our spacing settings. And let's say, let's create a little button to edit this value. So let's go inside our code, inside our spacing component. Let's create a button. And on click, we will use our onChange and we will edit the value. So let's say new value. Okay, let's do this. Let's come back into our code. So it's not super sexy, but if we click on, we have this new button, edit value, and if we click on it, the property has been edited. Perfect. So now let's create our real spacing component, the one that will be able to handle the margin and the padding of our block. So let's come back inside the code. And first, let's define what will be the end result type of our spacing components. Spacing field type. So we will have a margin object, and inside of this margin object, we will have the top, right, bottom, left. And for each of them, actually, I will define another type, spacing value, with value and units, because I want to be able to edit separately the value and the unit of this value. So for px, RAM, a percentage, that kind of thing. So right. Of course, maybe there is some better way to structure this, but to keep it simple, let's just do it like this. And the second one for the padding, so it will be exactly the same. So this value will have this type, and when I will use the unchange, I will change with an object that will have this type. So let's remove this, we don't need any more. So let's create our container, but for this one I will use a module.css because we will use some complex grid templates. So let's create a file. CSS. Okay, up. We call the class container. Let's import it here. Class is from up. Okay, we will do the CSS just after. So inside this container, we will have two other containers. One for the margin and one for the padding. Now we will do the CSS for this container, but it will be a bit long to do the calculation for all the grids, templates stuff. So I will do it quickly on the side and I'm coming back. So I did the CSS for the style of the containers. I will show you like a quick picture of the things that we want to do at the end. So this CSS will structure the organization like top, right, bottom, left, and for the margin, and inside this the padding with the same thing like you can see in the picture. So let's come back inside our code. So for now it doesn't display anything. If we go to the page builder, we add more styling to make it more sexy. So let's come back quickly in a container and we will add a border 500. So now if we come back, we can see now we have this square with our border and our background. So inside this container, actually let's put this inside the margin container. Inside this margin container, we want a little margin text here. So let's create an absolute. So let's create it in absolute. We do margin text white. Maybe I do not have to switch between the CSS file and our components. We will mix both actually. So I will use npm CLSX. I will use a library called CLSX that will allow us to mix both. So let's do it here. And we will add the relative here. one. We will see if it's okay. Let's also actually put the more like the styling here if we want to change later. Yeah, perfect. So we have the margin here, like this text is a bit too big. It says font semi-bold. Okay, looks good. Okay, so now let's create the top, right bottom and the left elements. So let's do top, right bottom, and left value. Let's return. Maybe it takes this text white also, and key who gives the text, and we are using a grid area. We will use the grid area, so we will configure it in the CSS just after. So for this one, let's give the name of the value. So, and inside the grid area, so now if we do this and we come back to the page builder, they are all on the bottom. So if we go inside the CSS, we will add a new property called grid template areas, and we will set that the top will be in the middle of the first line. After we will left, right, and on the last line, bottom. Okay. So now if we go inside the page builder, we can see their position is correct. Let me just check these. Yeah, because they are not centered. Okay, so let's fix this. So inside the button, we can put, for example, flex justify center item center. Oops. Center. Okay, and let's do the same also for the padding. Up. So at the end, we will have our base for the layout of the margin and the padding. Let's come back here. It will be the same for this. And we will give a bit of styling. Up. Maybe let's do BG 600. Let's zoom out also a bit. Okay, that's quite fine. And let's add our padding here and relative. And perfect. Maybe let's reduce even more excess. Let's put like 10 px to be extra small. Okay, looks great. So now let's take care of these buttons. So what we're gonna do is when we click on them, we will have a little pop-up with a slider, some common value that we can put, and a select for the units. So let's create a new file. Let's call it spacing popover, because it will be a little popover. it will have the spacing value. Yeah, I didn't export. Up. You have the spacing value. We have the on change. Give it. Okay, and we will give the grid area to position the button. So to do the popover, let's install some new dependencies. I will use headless UI React, and I will also use React Popover. Let's start by defining the list of units also like this. And we will also define a list of custom values, so the user will have some shortcuts. Okay, so now we will create the popover. So we will use the component from the headless UI. Pop. Up. And we will add the style. So we will just center everything. And inside this, we will have the popover button. We will give the grid area. And so we will need to import spacing value, the change, and the grid area. In the button, we will display the value. So spacing value dot value. It's needed to just to not display anything. And next to the value, we will display the units. Also, if the value is auto, there is no unit in this case. So let's do something like, so if we're under auto, we display the spacing value dot unit. Otherwise, we display nothing. So now let's add the style. So for the text of the button, we will want to have the same as we did here. Text white, XSM, and already. If we replace this div by our popover, our special component for the button. So for the spacing value, we will give and for the on change, for now, let's just do a console.log of nothing special. We can delete this and this. We close the component. Grid area will be E, and there is no class name anymore. Okay. So now if we come back on our page builder, by default we have no values, so let's put 0. Okay, so it's working well. Now what we need to do is when we click on the button will be to display the pop-up. So now we will use the popover dot panel just to try my popover. Let's see what does it do. Okay, it's displaying here. So now let's put it absolute. Display on the top, perfect. Border with 800 UG, 500, 400. up. That's the PG weight. Okay. Okay. So the issue that we have is that we cannot position the popover correctly, especially for the one on the sides. So we're gonna use the React popover to correct this. Let's go quickly inside the documentation. It should be an example to position correctly your panel. That's it, sir. So we're gonna use the use popper, and so let's create this. Import the states, style and attribute. So after we reference this inside the panel, and we reference this one. Let's see the box. Okay, good and good. So now we have an issue with the Z index. So perfect. So we have some type errors. Let's solve this. So the reference element is a button. So let's put HTML button elements, and here we will use the function to get it up, and same for here, but the panel will be div elements. So HTML div elements, and we will use the function ref. Okay, perfect. Great. So now we will create the elements to edit our value. So first of all, we will create a slider. So to create a slider, we'll use the input of type range. And let's say it will have a minimum value of 1 and a max of 300. And when the value of the range change, we will update, thanks to the end change, the value of the property. So we will give the actual value of the spacing value, and we will update the value with the value of the slider. Okay, let's try it. Okay, the value changed and doesn't update. So when we update the value, nothing is changed. That's because here we just do a console log of the value. So if we check, we will see something weird. That's because by default, the default values of spacing is a spacing default value. So this we will need to change it. So let's not put any default value actually up. Yeah, and we need to compare this. Yeah, let's see. Okay, so now we have the value, which is, so now the value is correctly updated. We need to do the unchange value. So for example, after when we will update the padding, so the padding will be here. And for the margin, we give value.margin, and we will update with val. So we update the current value with the new value. Okay. So now we should see the change. Margin for the value exactly value dot margin fresh up. So yes, here we actually are displaying spacing, but now it's not just a simple string, so it will not work anymore. So let's just remove this. Let's refresh. Now we can see that the value is updated correctly. Perfect. This is for the value. Now let's take care about the units. So we will do the select. We will do a select with the values that we have defined here. So actually, let's put Felix row. I will put the slider and the unit select on the same line. Time center. Justify. Let's go for this. For the select, I will use the list box. The value will be spacing value that unit, and if it's new, we don't display anything, and the on change new unit dark. Okay, and so we will create the list box button. I just put a bit of padding for now, so we will have the display of the units, and by default SIPX up. Now we will display the list of options. So it will be absolute with a Z index higher than the one we have. PG gray 100. Let's put actually the background like dark. So BG gray. We will say that all the text will be white. For this one, I do rounded text gray 800. You're going and text left should be quite okay. So now we will do our mapping of the units that we have defined. So unit, the index, option. We give the key and value will be the unit. Okay. So here we will display the unit, and actually let's select Z. No, it's not like this. Like this. I think like this. Let's check quickly. Documentation. Box. Active selected. Yes, so digs up. So we will say that it will become a BG gray 600 if selected. Good. So let's go inside the page builder and see what we have. Okay. Okay, so we have some style issues. So let's not put between, put center and space, or yeah, better. Let's add, okay, okay. So here next to the unit, I want to display the value inside the input field so we can edit it directly manually. I will wrap it with the list box, so select, and I will create an input. So this one will have a type text. The value will be the spacing value dot value, and the unchange will be the same as this one. Okay. For the class name, so text gray 800, small width H8. It look like not too bad. Let's make it a bit rounded. Here it will be rounded also up. Make the wrapper rounded, and they will be on the same line. So flex row, item centers. Let's add a bit of border for both, and border white. Maybe on the panel, let's add a bit of padding top button. Okay. And if you click on the unite, we can change the unite. Okay. Maybe let's do it a bit bigger. Okay. And area text. Yes. So if we update the slider, we change the value, we can edit manually, we can change the unite. Perfect. And let's add another little option, is some, let's say some common values. So with the common values that we have defined here, let's create a new div, so grid, and will be a 5-column grid. And let's put a bit of gap between each arrow. So we will map on the common values. And we will display a div with the val, and we will create some little cards. But for the first one, the first one will be a bit bigger than the others. And let's create some little card. Okay, and the on click. Same as this almost. Nova and will be there's an error. We need missing the key. Okay, so it's quite good. Let's add a bit of spacing. And here, items. Okay. So now if we click, and we can see that the value is correctly updated. Okay, that's great. It should be working for every item. Perfect. So now let's do the same for the padding. So we would just had to copy paste this part. Okay. And we'll be padding here and padding. Okay, so we have an issue. So because this is absolute and we put a relative for the padding for this one, we will need to do it differently. So we will need to remove this relative, but the padding, so now it should work. Yeah, it's working well, but the padding is badly positioned. So let's just do it manually. So let's say a bit too much. Okay, and left. No. Again. Bit more. Yes. That's perfect. So, and now, okay. So the padding and the margin are working well. So now that our custom settings is done, we will use the value of those margin and those padding inside our block. So if we go in our block, spacing will not be a string anymore. It will be spacing field. We didn't export. So now, for example, I do margin top. So now if I do spacing dot margin dot and units, we will also I need to specify that if. But so. Okay. There's something like this. Up. So now, if I do this, okay, 12 EM and okay, let's put it in PX for this example. So the margin work correctly. Same for the padding. So just for the example, to see correctly the padding and the margin. Let's put some background. G gray. So the margin work correctly, and if we update the padding, we haven't done the padding, so for example, let's copy paste this padding top. Pigs. And if we update the padding, we can see that the background increase, so the padding work correctly too. Let's put also px by default. So when we change a unit, so when we change a value, we don't need to select manually also the unit. We'll have a unit by default. So technically we need to do it for all the margin and all the padding, but to let's do something more smart. We will do an array, same as this. Up. And for each of these values, so top, right, bottom, left, we will create. We don't need. We will create an object with this one value for the margin and one value for the padding. So actually here we will have an issue because it needs to be capitalized. So let's do it like this. We return this. Yeah. Const cap will be equal to e dot 0. So maybe before to have the auto completion, let's convert it into let's convert this into an object. So object dot assign no, I don't remember. Okay, so now will be easier. So first we need to capitalize the first letter of the value e, uppercase, and we will add the rest of the word. So it will be slice 1. Okay, so cap. And we'll be padding here. And here it will be e. Why Typescript is complaining? String Typescript not being super smart on this. So the Typescript has a type for the positions. So yeah. Okay, so now we can put this everywhere. So basically we just created so for each position we created a margin. So for example, for top, margin top, and we will get the value of top of the margin top here, and same for the padding. So style is complaining because it don't know that exactly that this is CSS property. So let's just as React CSS property. Same for this one. Okay. If we come back to the page builder, we get some errors. So this actually we don't need because it will return an object. Let's console log this. Let's see what we have. Oh, we didn't do the triple dot at the right place. Okay. So now, okay. Margin working, but we don't update the unit. So actually here will be easier maybe. So value val dot value and units. Val dot value different of auto dot unit px. Okay, so let's refresh. Okay, it's working well. Oh, but that is way too big, of course. Up. If we do auto, working fine. Great. We can remove the console log. So our spacing custom setting is down. What I recommend you, if you're using it, it's also after to create a wrapper for each of your blocks and to put these custom settings by default in this wrapper. So each of your block will have this spacing component, and you will be able to edit the margin and the padding of all your blocks. So that's all for today. We have seen how to create a custom settings in Suncel and to use it in our page builder. If you want to have access to these custom settings, I will host it on GitHub. I will put the link in the description. So I hope you have enjoyed this video and see you in the next one. Bye bye.